Louise Peete, originally named Lofi Louise Pressler, entered the world in Beanville, Louisiana, into a family with her father being a well-known and affluent newspaper publisher. She often emphasized her upbringing, asserting that her parents were refined and educated individuals who didn't raise their children to be delinquents. Her educational journey took her to a private school in New Orleans. However, her time there was cut short when she was expelled at the age of 15. In 1903, she tied the knot with Henry Bosley, a traveling salesman. Tragically, Bosley took his own life 4 years later upon discovering Peete in bed with another man. Following Bosley's death, Peete moved to Shreveport and took up a profession of a high-class prostitute, supplementing her income by pilfering money from her clients. By 1911, Peete found herself in Boston, Massachusetts, adopting the alias Louise M. Gold and crafting a new persona as a 19-year-old Dallas heiress named R.H. Rosley. Under this guise, she spun a tale of being confined to a convent by her family and staging an escape. Her charisma and allure allowed her to worm her way into the circles of the affluent Boston families, convincing one of them to take her in. Exploiting their trust, Peete made expensive purchases on the family's tab from some of Boston's most prestigious stores and stole money from their acquaintances and employees. Eventually, authorities uncovered her true identity. To prevent the embarrassment of the implicated family, the police permitted Peete to leave town without facing consequences. Pete's life took a tumultuous turn when she settled in Waco, Texas, where she engaged romantically with the wealthy oil baron Joe Appel. Their brief encounter ended tragically when Appel was discovered dead, shot, and missing his valuable diamond jewelry, just a week after their meeting. Peete faced arrest on charges of his murder, but skillfully persuaded a grand jury that she acted in self-defense, alleging that Appel had attempted to assault her. In 1913, she moved to Dallas, Texas, where she promptly married Harry Farrote, a night clerk at the St. George Hotel. Farrote their union was fraught with turmoil. Shortly after their marriage, Peete pilfered $20,000 worth of jewels from the hotel safe. Farrote, though initially under suspicion, was cleared by the police. Tragically, he succumbed to despair, allegedly over Pete's infidelity and accusations, taking his own life. Despite doubts surrounding the circumstances of his death, it is speculated that Farrote might have been another victim of Pete's treacherous schemes. By 1915, Peete had shifted to Denver, Colorado, tying the knot with salesman Richard Peete. Their relationship was marked by constant conflicts, eventually leading to their separation in 1920. Shortly thereafter, Peete departed from her estranged husband and daughter, moving to Los Angeles, California. There, she encountered Jacob C. Denton, a wealthy mining engineer and recent widower. Pete's arrival in Denton's life coincided with his mysterious disappearance merely a week after she moved into his lavish mansion. Strange events followed her occupancy, including her hiring a gardener to deliver dirt to the basement under the guise of cultivating mushrooms. Peete also forged Denton's signature to access his finances, weaving elaborate stories about Denton's absence, claiming he was hiding due to injuries inflicted by a Spanish woman, or that he was ashamed of his amputated arm. During this time, she posed as Denton's wife, exploiting his resources, pawning his belongings, and fabricating tales to explain his absence to his acquaintances. Peete even persuaded tenants renting Denton's property in Phoenix, Arizona, to make their payments directly to her. As suspicion grew and inquiries intensified, Denton's daughter hired an attorney to seek answers. When Peete left the mansion, Denton's daughter arranged a search, leading to the grim discovery of Denton's decomposing body in the basement, bound and concealed. Police tracked Peete to Denver, where she was questioned but offered varying explanations for Denton's demise, none of which held up to scrutiny. Eventually, she was indicted and tried for first-degree murder, receiving a life sentence in February of 1921. Throughout her trial and initial years of her imprisonment, Richard Peete, her husband, staunchly believed in her innocence. However, their relationship soured after she urged him to divorce her, abruptly cutting off communication. Despondent over her rejection, Richard tragically took his own life in 1924, with Peete attributing his death to guilt over her conviction and his declining health. Peete commenced her prison sentence in San Quentin State Prison and was later moved to the California Institution for Women. Renowned as a model prisoner, she contributed as a dental assistant, tended the prison's floral gardens, and wrote for the institution's newspaper. After 18 years of incarceration, she was granted parole in 1939 due to her exemplary behavior. Upon release, Peete found herself under the guardianship of Jessie Marcy, an advocate who had supported her release. She started working as Marcy's live-in housekeeper until Marcy's passing. Subsequently, she moved in with her probation officer, Emily Latham, assuming the role of nurse and housekeeper until Latham's sudden demise in 1943. Police, unaware of Pete's criminal past or parole status, did not extensively investigate these deaths. Under her new identity as Anna Lee, Pete's life took a series of dark turns. She entered the household of Arthur C. Logan and his wife Margaret, an elderly couple residing in Pacific Palisades. Margaret, convinced of Pete's innocence and having lobbied for her release, formed a bond with Peete during her imprisonment. The Logans had also cared for Pete's daughter while she was incarcerated. Peete became the live-in caregiver for the Logans, particularly aiding Arthur, who was afflicted by age-related dementia and declared mentally unfit. In a sequence reminiscent of her past actions, Peete married Lee Borden Judson on May 2, 1944, concealing her history of imprisonment for murder from him. As tensions escalated within the Logan household, Peete began spreading tales of Arthur's purported violent outbursts towards her and Margaret. On June 1, 1944, Margaret mysteriously vanished. Peete claimed Arthur's mental instability and a violent incident led her to commit him to Patton State Hospital as his purported foster sister. When questioned about Margaret's whereabouts, Peete spun a story of Arthur attacking his wife, causing severe facial injury, leading Margaret to undergo plastic surgery and seclude herself. For 6 months, Peete and her husband resided in the Logans' home, with Peete misappropriating their funds and forging their signatures. Arthur's demise in Patton State Hospital on December 6, 1944, drew attention when a forged check surfaced at the Logans' bank. Subsequently, police discovered Margaret's decomposed remains buried in the backyard under an avocado tree on December 20, 1944, 6 months after her disappearance. Following her arrest, Peete claimed Arthur had committed the murder in a fit of violence. She admitted to burying Margaret, but denied responsibility for her death, citing fear of being implicated due to her previous conviction. However, autopsy findings revealed Margaret had been shot in the back of the neck and suffered a skull fracture. Judson, Pete's husband, was also arrested for murder, but was released due to insufficient evidence. Tragically, upon his release, Judson jumped to his death from an office building, leaving a note citing Pete's association as the reason for his suicide. Upon learning of her husband's demise, Peete expressed remorse, attributing his tragic end to her association with him. Pete's third trial for murder commenced in Los Angeles on April 23, 1945. Prosecutors presented the theory that Peete murdered Margaret Logan to gain control over her finances. They alleged that a dispute over a forged $200 check in Logan's name led to her killing. The jury deliberated and, on May 31st, found Louise Peete guilty of first-degree murder, resulting in a death sentence. During the sentencing, as the verdict was delivered, Peete, notably indifferent, sat in the courtroom engrossed in The Importance of Living, a philosophical work by Lin Yu Tang. Her reaction to the reading of her sentence included a brief mocking expression towards the prosecutor before returning to her book. Despite maintaining her innocence in the years following her conviction, Pete's appeals were unsuccessful. On April 11, 1947, she was executed via the gas chamber at San Quentin State Prison, becoming the second woman in California's history to face state execution. Pete's final resting place is at Angeles Rosedale Cemetery in Los Angeles. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing by clicking the red subscribe button below. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.